Cosmology is the study of the universe in its totality. We think of cosmology as science, whereas the Egyptians considered it sacred.
There's one thing we know about ancient Egypt for certainty, is that they observed the star Sirius. And we are sure when they speak of that star.
Everything that comes out of the ancient world has to have a spiritual and metaphysical base.
The ancients, and the ancient Egyptians in particular, but probably ancient civilizations more generally, saw themselves, humanity, us, as tied in with the bigger environment, the cosmos, the bigger picture.
They built monuments and their alignment. But what for? And their belief systems have validity today.
If we want to decode Egyptian symbolism, we should look for clues in the ancient language that Hakim learned as a child from his elders, living along the Band of Peace. Looking at the many images left by the Egyptians, we have assumed that they were obsessed with death. Turning to the ancient Suf language, however, we learn that they didn't even have a word for death. They called it westing.
We have no word of death in our culture. No word death. And to express this operation of death, we say westing. Going towards west, like the sun rises from the east, and westing. So there is no word of death there. We believe in resurrection. If the sun sets in the west, the resurrection after the next day, when the sun rises the next day. So the deceased believe that it's just like the sun.
The Egyptians obviously had a very different worldview from ours today. They believed in the afterlife and the soul's immortality.
It wasn't possible at all that they had found some sort of signs of immortality. As crazy as it may seem, they seem to be very, very convinced that they knew how to send the king to his cosmic world. Those stellar gods, of whom the king believed that he himself would be one stellar god after his death, constructed monuments and performed rituals that mimic the events that they saw in the sky. It sounds against all the tenets of our scientific beliefs, but we have to see why they were so convinced. The ancient Egyptians perceived the land as a cosmic environment, that it followed the activities of the sky because they believed them to be running parallel. And they had reasons to believe that. One of the main reasons was the cycles of the Nile. The Nile was the lifeblood of Egypt, and it performed the cycle, which followed the cycle of the sun and the stars. It's not surprising at all that they associated the appearance of the stars with the rebirth of the Nile. Essentially, this star religion, if you like, boiled down to one important aspect, that it somehow could help the king become a spiritual being and return to the cosmic world in a specific place with Orion and so forth. How they thought they were going to do it is by looking very, very carefully at what happened to the stars. And the stars perform an annual cycle. But those of Sirius and Orion give us a curious cycle in that they disappear, or they appear to disappear. But if you watch a star over the course of the year, you'll find that there comes a time when it is very low in the west, at time of sunset. So the sun sets, and as it gets dark, the star appears just for a few seconds over the way. If you come the next day, you will not see that star. And for 70 days or so, the star has gone. It seems to have gone under the earth. But after those 70 days, it appears at this time at dawn, rising just before the sun, which we call the heliacal rising, which we call the rebirth of the star. So in their mind, something happened. In their mind, the star went in the underworld, stayed in the underworld for 70 days, and then by magic popped up again and reborn again in the east. That's the period text. The period text mimic the site.
At the ancient site of Saqqara, we find the pyramid texts, the oldest known religious texts in the world. Covering the inner walls of these small pyramids are thousands of hieroglyphs showing knowledge of celestial mechanics and cycles of time. Although we've come a long way in our understanding of hieroglyphs, it is possible that many layers of meaning in the symbols remain hidden. Until now. When we approach hieroglyphics, we do so from our own point of view, and we assume that the letters of our alphabet correspond with certain hieroglyphs. There are 4,000 Egyptian hieroglyphs, but only 26 letters. In order to crack the code, we need to open our minds to different levels of meaning.
I think it's familiarity with the way modern languages work. No one expects that a word would work differently. Our mindset is that a letter is the carrier of a phonetic value and that a word is the carrier of a concept. To understand the Egyptian words, you have to start from the approach that the letter is the carrier of the concept and the word is an extended sense. There are nuances of meanings to the words that you don't get if you don't understand what the individual glyphs mean. For instance, there's an Egyptian word that is translated as diving duck, but when you read the glyphs, it really reads pool of water, place of diving duck.
In 1822, French scholar Jean-François Champollion and British scientist Thomas Young deciphered the hieroglyphics from the Rosetta Stone. The stone was created in 196 BC. It showed the same text in hieroglyphic, Greek, and Demotic Egyptian on the one tablet. Scholars have used Champollion's translations as the basis for deciphering hieroglyphs. Could Champollion have used subtlety or even withheld some information?
One biographical study of Champollion said that he delayed for a very long period of time before producing his translation because, in the words of the study, he clung stubbornly to the idea that an Egyptian glyph might mean something more than just a phonetic term.
Laird Scranton is a computer software engineer who has interpreted a new aspect of hieroglyphics. His research is revolutionizing the way hieroglyphic is understood.
Basically, Egyptian hieroglyphic words work more like an acronym in English, like the phrase FYI or acronyms such as CIA or CBS, where anyone who reads English understands that you don't try to pronounce this word. This is not a word that you're going to read for its meaning in terms of the letters all put together. It's one letter at a time, stands for one word at a time. You put the words together to get the meaning.
If we think of each hieroglyphic word as an acronym, rather than having a phonetic value, a new layer of interpretation appeared. Hieroglyphs reveal in symbolic terms the way the ancient Egyptians thought the universe worked.
I can show that certain key glyph shapes came out of cosmology, which describes how the universe was created. Okay, because the shapes came out of cosmology, it makes sense that the meanings that attach to the shape are associated with cosmology also. They have meanings related to the creation of the universe.
Three toys in one, you can
the
scratch
sun
it
glyph
too.
means what it means, and that's
Good for scratching.
all
You'll see.
meanings.
You'll see eventually.
It's hard to argue that the word
You're trying
an orbit.
trying to demonstrate that I was wrong.
Or
Depends on how you scratch it. Scratch it the way way you scratch on my pants or
on the side.
on the chair. You'll see it like it.
The ancient Egyptians were almost obsessive keepers of records. And one thing that they observed most was the celestial